And welcome back to Hoopsville, an extended version here on Thursday. Not as extended as Sundays and Mondays will be. Going a few extra 30 minutes here on Thursday. We learned our lesson from Sunday trying to cram too many guests in. But more importantly, a reminder again, we'll do it again after the segment too. Sunday coming up, we have a special show. We're finalizing the time, but let's just say 6 to 9 roughly right now. Could be a little different than that. And then Monday, we're looking to go maybe 3 to 6. We'll talk about that in more detail coming up, but just to keep that in mind. It's been a jam-packed show. We have plenty of guests to have talked to, and plenty more to come. We told you we would kind of change things up a little bit here, especially late in the show. Don't normally talk Northeast region, but there's certainly a lot going on in the Northeast region this weekend, and we figured if we waited till Sunday, it would be a little too late. So we're going to bring in a special guest, one you probably haven't heard from in a while, but is certainly still heavily involved in basketball in the Northeast, and as a former national champion. Joining us on the Hoopsville hotline, Michael Crotty from Williams. I always say coach, and technically you are, but welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. It's good to be on the show.
Absolutely. Former Williams basketball player, a champion of 03, a near champion of 04. We won't try and have you relive that too much, but it's not that long ago in some ways, but the college did just recognize you and your team on the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, it was great. We were able to get out to Williams. And unfortunately, about half the guys who were going to be able to make it back couldn't travel because it was the weekend of the snowstorm.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, we had some flights canceled. I guess, we got a lot of the guys around the country, and we wound up having about 6 or 7 guys back, and it was great to be back. Doesn't feel like it was quite 10 years ago, but certainly it was great to get back there at the school and see a lot of our former fans and teachers and whatnot. And we had a great weekend with Coach Maker and the current youth squad, so it was great.
Certainly know that region of Massachusetts well, having gone to Connecticut gone to school in northwestern Connecticut. It gets a little tricky trying to travel out there, so I can understand people missing
Absolutely.
out. Of course, this Williams squad sitting third in the regional rankings, or not third, I should say third in the conference, playing decent basketball, but gotten blown out by Amherst a couple of times. This kind of starts our road down, as it were, through the Northeast. Of course, Middlebury right there in the hunt. How do you feel about your Eves and the rest of the NESCAC?
I've seen Williams play a couple times on the computer. I've seen him play a couple times live. And they got a lot of talent. They got a lot of guys that can put the ball in the basket. I did get to take in the most recent loss to Amherst, and I think they had obviously had a kind of a difficult day. But Amherst, they've got a lot of talent as well. Watching both of those games so far, I think they obviously seem to have an edge with the 2-0 record, and they bring back a lot of upper class talent, with Casilla and Workman and Toomey. But I think Williams, when they shoot the basketball well, has proven to play better defense on those days, which is kind of an interesting, combination. I think their offensive success leads to good defensive intensity, and I think they're clearly good enough to beat anybody on any given night. Middlebury, so tough. I know Coach Brown and Coach Pope up there, and they've just got so many tough competitors. I watched them play once live and a couple times on the computer as well, and saw obviously that thriller with Amherst, which I'm sure they were sorry to come out on the losing end. So those three teams are just they're all right there. I think toughness and talent and kind of who's going to step up on the day, and then Tufts is the fourth team in remaining in the NESCAC. And I know Coach Sheldon really well actually played against his team with a group of guys in a scrimmage game way earlier in the year, and they've got a lot of firepower too, and some great freshmen coming on to help their upperclassmen. And with their talent, I think that they're certainly nothing to be overlooked for the Lord Jeffs there in the semifinal. But should be 3 really good games on Amherst this weekend.
I was going to say Saturday it'll be Amherst versus Tufts at 1 o'clock at Amherst, and of course Williams and Middlebury facing off at 3 o'clock. Williams sitting in the third spot in the regional rankings, actually sitting pretty, as it were, 2 spots ahead of Middlebury, so certainly maybe a little bit more comfortable. Of course, regional rankings a little bit different than they were when you were playing, but certainly still all that important. And Williams third. Do you feel confident that the Eves can make it, even with a Pool C, and for that matter, that 3 teams from the NESCAC will easily make it into the NCAA tournament?
I certainly don't sit in a place to say easily. I would be quite surprised if they didn't. I think the worst that anyone could wind up with is is just 3 or 4 losses. So I think those 3 teams have kind of proven against regional opponents. Obviously, in one of the toughest conferences in the country, you have a 10-0 team. You have a couple of 9-1 and an 8-2. They're all outstanding teams. I guess I would say I'd be surprised if all 3 didn't make it, but I know that the committee certainly has a tough job. But being an alum of a Northeast school in Williams and watching a lot of the basketball here, seeing some great success on the national stage with Williams getting my team having a national title, and Williams having 6 Final Fours. Amherst has a national title, a number of Final Fours. Middlebury's been back. I think all 3 have earned it, but I know that my opinion doesn't mean a whole lot when it comes down to how they're formulating the brackets. But I think it'll happen, and I think that all 3 teams will acquit themselves well. I mean, they've got great squads, and they all play really hard on both ends of the floor, which I think will give them a great opportunity in playing in a tough NESCAC to make some noise in the NCAA tournament.
Let's talk about the rest of the Northeast. We'll talk about why you know these teams so well besides just being up there and being a fan in a minute. But WPI sitting second in the regional rankings. Rhode Island College is 4th. MIT 6th. Springfield 7th. Brandeis 8th. And then the rest of the group. A lot of good basketball this year in the Northeast, not just being played in the NESCAC, has been proven by those teams I've just mentioned. It seems like, I think the Northeast always has a lot of good talent, but I think this year it may be a little bit deeper in the sense of the number of teams that could make serious runs in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree. I think every time I've seen the D3 Hoops Top 25, I mean, it's littered with Northeast teams. WPI, and as you mentioned, why I know some of these guys and we'll get to, but I know them pretty well. A lot of local products here for Coach Bartley, and they've just had an amazing year. Their starting point guard's a guy I have coached in the past few years. He's coming through the AAU ranks, Aaron Davis, who's stepped in and really been a great floor general for them as a freshman. But they've got Coppola and Longwell. They've got some good young talent. I think WPI is going to be a team you'll hear from for a while to come. And obviously they've been winning 20 games a year for a long time. MIT and Coach Anderson with Cates and Tashman, and they've had some injuries. I think that they've really done a lot, missing some great parts of their roster, and the way they battle the justice they've shown, I think, is exemplary of the kind of coaching job that he does all the time. He's one of the best around, and just a great guy. Certainly Brandeis coached me, and they got some great talent there. I've seen them more than a couple times, being really close by, and I think they have the ability to kind of knock anybody off playing in the UAA. They've had some big wins and another tough conference. So, Springfield, you mentioned it, with big wins. And Babson's another team I've seen a lot in. They've got their big guy back just recently, and they've been on a great streak to end the season, and they're going to be going into the semifinals of the NEWMAC this weekend. I think they're kind of a team to watch, with that, having their big man back and kind of get here. So it's, the Northeast, you mentioned Rhode Island College. They're good every year. I mean, they are well coached, and I don't see them quite as much, but there's a lot of really good basketball teams coming out of the Northeast, and that's really exciting to be around.
Yeah, I mean, the Northeast, I think there's always been good teams. I would venture to say, of course, in my time, that really the Amherst and the Williams runs into the national title games and into the championships back in your day may have kind of spearheaded a little bit more recognition of the Northeast. Have you seen the brand of basketball get better since that time?
Well, that's a tough question to ask. Certainly the level that some of these teams in the Northeast have been at for a decade now, or maybe more, has been so good. Being somebody that graduated before, I've seen teams that, I think, wow, that would have been a difficult matchup for us, and then those guys would have really challenged us. We were 61 and 3 my last 2 years, so our group always feels pretty confident when you match teams up historically. But I think overall, I feel like the Northeast, maybe has improved from top to bottom, and the depth you mentioned this year, I think, is really really impressive. There's a lot of different pockets of the country that have great Division III basketball, and maybe sometimes the Northeast doesn't get maybe some of the credit people think it deserves. But I can also tell you from being able to go to 2 Final Fours and playing teams from, the Midwest and kind of other areas of the country, that and we don't get to see them all the time, but the games we played there were outstanding, and then those guys were so darn good too. And we played Amherst once there my senior year, and then so that was obviously a Northeast matchup, and we were able to show on a national level. And I do think the Northeast continues to improve from top to bottom, and they seem to have a national power and Final Four type of contender every single year. Last year MIT and Williams and Middlebury being there years prior. Williams had back-to-back Final Fours with Coach Maker, so it's kind of tough to argue against it because they kind of seem to be having a representative go really deep every year.
Sure. Talking to Michael Crotty here, former Williams basketball player, national champion in 03, a near miss and a nice turnaround shot from 10 feet to miss out on the one in 04. Let's talk about one of the reasons you know these teams so well. You now are director of your father's AAU team, the Middlesex Magic, and I'll freely admit we don't talk to AAU people all that often because really, the stigma is, and rightly so or wrongly so, that AAU is a funnel for D1 programs, maybe some D2s, that D3 is overlooked by a lot of AAUs. I know that's to be the case in a lot of locations. You guys kind of do things a little bit differently there. You're a product of the Middlesex Magic, and of course, running it now, you guys do preach the YD3, as it were.
Sure, yeah, no, my father started the Middlesex Magic AU, and we're going to be going into our 20th year, so he started it in 93, and so I was just a young kid then, and myself and Ben Coffin actually came up playing together, and we're teammates at Williams, and my dad has helped place, dozens and dozens of players at schools, really at all levels, but, when you think about Division III basketball, we've had, I think, more than any AAU program in Massachusetts, maybe New England and the region in general, come through and go on to play Division III basketball. And my dad's message always was, education first, and using basketball as a vehicle to get the best academic and athletic experience that you can. And certainly, having gone through it myself as a player and now as a coach, I can say that there are so many wonderful schools in our region, and we've talked about many of them here tonight. And I stepped in and started coaching with my dad after spending 3 years being in player development with the Celtics. And unfortunately, my dad passed about 3 years ago, and I've taken over as opposed to just running it with him, and found a similar passion in trying to help these kids. And one of the things I tell the guys every year, and we have had Division I and II scholarship players the past years. I mean, Pat Connaughton is a guy we've had as a starter at Notre Dame. We've had guys go on and play any 10 Division II scholarship basketball, but more often than not, the majority of our team is Division III players. And what I tell them all when they come in, and if they have aspirations of higher, I say that's great, keep challenging yourself, but Division III basketball is not third class. And a lot of these players have that D1 dream, and they should, and that's great. But what they need a little help recognizing is just how great basketball is at the Division III level. They start to get an idea of it when they make visits, but I try to give them an idea of it before when they start playing for me. And, once we get into the season a little bit, I'll kind of get Ben Coffin and check out a few of my former teammates that are still in the area, and some other D3 guys will come down, and I'll put the whistle aside for a night and say, I'm just going to play, and we'll scrimmage with them a little bit. And at this point, we can still do a pretty decent job against them. Once I get too old, I'm sure we'll quit playing. But they get an idea of what D3 players 10 years out look like, or 8 years out. And Seth Hobbins, a good friend of mine from the area, who played at Rochester, was an All-American. He'll come down here. So we've got a lot of awareness of just how great D3 basketball is, and I try to tell them that, which is nothing against the higher level. But a lot of kids need recognition. A lot of kids sort of live in a dream world and say, hey, that here is a great level of basketball, and by the way, you're a student athlete, and it really means that, in every sense of the word. And so my experience as a player at Williams was just phenomenal, and something I cherish. And Harry Shee, he recruited me there, and Coach Paulson was my coach for 4 years, and they stress just the great balance that it gives. And what these guys don't understand, some of these players coming in, is you work really, really hard. You'll work like a D1 program. If you're in one of these elite programs that's going to be national contender, you're going to work that hard, but there's so many other pieces of it, and it's voluntary. It's not, hey, here's a scholarship and sort of you have to do what we say. You still kind of have to do what the program has to offer, but there's such good basketball, and I think we do a good job of illustrating that to the kids. And when this class of mine, our current seniors, is all said and done, we had 2 teams this past year and 2 teams the year before, one the year before that in 2011. We'll have above 30 kids from the last 3 graduating classes playing Division III basketball in the Northeast and beyond, into other regions as well. And it's something that my dad is very proud of, and it's something that I'm extremely proud of, to be carrying that legacy on and helping these kids take the step to college.
And the other thing, too, here is obviously you have the basketball side of things, but let's just, the regional rankings. Amherst, WPI, Williams, Rhode Island College, Middlebury, MIT, Springfield, Brandeis, top 8. No slouches academically here. So what do you do to drive home that message? Obviously, the AAUs or the D1s and stuff, it may not be as big a deal of trying to stress. So you certainly have to take on that adage. You mentioned student athlete, but do you have to almost guide them and go, listen, this is about your academics?
No, you certainly do. And again, that's something I learned kind of from my dad. My dad was a Marine, and that was his higher level of education. And he started with me and my sister, and stressing that he wanted the best education we could have, and he wanted more for us than he had. And that's translated through to all the kids he coached, and I got to watch him do that, and it was really fun to watch him kind of guide a lot of kids in that way. And I try to do it now. Our staff, our entire Middlesex Magic program, and what we do is a lot of I won't turn a kid away from my program if he doesn't have the academic profile of one of those, schools you mentioned, because those are some of the most challenging schools to get into in the country, obviously. But we push each kid to maximize the academic, side of the equation, to say, hey, you need to be pushing as hard as you can. We have kids in our program, 8th, 9th, 10th grade. We don't just wait till junior year and say, oh, this is an important year. A lot of people think your junior year is important. Well, when it comes to this, so is your freshman and sophomore and everything before it. So we check report cards, we push kids, we hold them to a high standard, and that's something that we don't pay lip service to. Certain kids maybe have issues and they can't achieve certain academic levels, but we want to push them to maximize everything they can do individually. But we got Duncan Robinson's going to Williams this year, and Harry Rafferty, or next year, and Harry Rafferty's going to Wesleyan. You got Jesse Palyuka's at Amherst. We got Brian Hurley's at Bowdoin, to name some of the NESCAP players. Aaron Davis at WPI, who played for us. Out of Rochester, we got Kyle Reardon. We have a lot of kids that are going to some of these top level schools, and the one thing that they absolutely understand is, as important as coming to practice and making sure you're working on your basketball, if you don't have the academic profile, it doesn't matter how good you are. It's just not going to happen. And, I don't think my dad was ever more proud than when he had 3 players he had coached that were starting on the MIT team a few years back. And, he was beaming with pride about that, to be at a school like MIT.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took just as much pride certainly in each kid, and in them achieving the best that they can, whatever school that is, whether it's Division I, II, or III. But certainly being a school that's helped guide kids to elite academic Division III schools that are also outstanding basketball programs is something that I love to do and something we're really proud of.
Talking to Michael Crotty here, director of the Middlesex Magic AAU. Should mention this is pre-recorded due to our busy schedules on an extended version of Hoopsville here in the last segment of the show, or not last segment, but the last bit of the show. Of course, former player at Williams, won a national title in 03, nearly won one in 04. Of course, when you left Williams, you decided why not go for bigger and broader and join the Boston Celtics. Not just in some small role, not as an intern. You joined him as director of player development. Not all that often a Division III guy gets a title of trying to develop players in the NBA. And, of course, in 08, helping the team beat the Lakers for a world championship. Quickly, the evolution of that happening and what your experience was there for the Celtics.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Those 3 years there were terrific, and I had tried to reach out to anyone at the organization each year when I came back in the summer from Williams, see if there was anything I could do to be involved. And I think I was 0 for 4. But my name was there, and they at least knew that I was interested. And then I spent 1 year playing overseas after Williams, and when I came back, I was considering going to play another year, but I reached out again, and I got a call back from one of the owners and said, hey, Danny Ainge could use a little help getting ready for the 2005 NBA draft. And so I raced in, and I basically was just kind of video editing, cuts, anything that needed to be done. But I would stay around there, of course, all day. I was there early and leaving late and working out. And then a lot of the guys started to funnel back, so I got to be around the workouts. And I think sometimes you start out just shagging basketballs and making the pass to the coach, but being around it, was really great. And at the end of the summer after the draft, the opening was there, and Danny talked to me about coming on in the capacity of director of player development, which I was 24 years old, and I think that it was great because Danny was able to kind of mold the role as he wanted it to be. So I spent a lot of time working with Doc Rivers and the coaching staff and traveling with the team. I spent some time doing, other things that kind of helped be a liaison between, our downtown office and our practice facility. And I was around the team all the time, getting to know the players. And it was a great experience to me. I could connect with them being a younger guy and somebody that had played. Although they might not have thought that when they first looked at me. But, I was occasionally thrust into practice, which was when we had injuries and whatnot, which was a humbling experience. I would do my best and hang in there. But,
But what's their reaction when there's a guy like yourself stepping onto the court and lacing them up and probably playing decently at least enough, and you're saying to them, and I won a national title, by the way?
Well, there's a couple of guys that were more interested in my background than others and saying, what's Williams? Not many of them kind of knew where I went to college, but a few were intrigued. I think the reaction, I remember one time being thrust in and, I think Delonte West went down with an ankle roll and I had to pop right in and I'm guarding, rookie Rajon Rondo.
Oh.
I think I jumped right into a defensive drill and Pierce tried to throw a skip pass and I picked it off. And they kind of looking at him after the drill broke and he said, I didn't even see the little guy over there, just kind of making a joke of it. But, I wasn't in there a whole lot. Most of the time I was on the sideline charting things. But it was, I think it was a lot of fun for me in 05-06. We had a tough year. In 06-07, we had a really bad year, and that was when everyone was disappointed we didn't get the ping pong balls for Gordon or Durant. And then the trades were made, and then my final year was 07-08, and we had training camp in Rome and London. We had Garnett and Allen added and Posey and P.J. Brown and Cassell came, and that was just a year I'll never forget. And we were 66-16 and able to win the title over the Lakers. I mean, growing up in the suburbs of Boston and being a big Celtics fan and coming from a family full of Celtics fans to win the championship, be a part of, be on the floor in the locker room, get a big championship ring. Was just a wonderful experience for me.
And of course, there's a picture of you on your Middlesex Magic page of you with Kevin Garnett with the championship trophy. Pretty cool experience. By the way, as a Chicago Bulls fan, especially back in the heyday, I just smile. It must have been cool.
Yeah, it was. I think when I was in the midst of it, you're just working, and it becomes sort of normal to see those guys every day as you would any colleague.
I know that feeling.
One of those guys, I gotta say, he was still one of those guys that seeing him every day was still a little bit, in awe. He's such a professional and an intense guy, and it's well documented. But he really is that. And but they're good guys. They're good guys, and they work hard. And being around, I'm glad I was able to be around both sides of it, and one of the best things Doc Rivers ever said to me when the trade went through and we had Garnett, I popped into his office. I said, hey, it sounds like it's done. And he said, yeah, it's done. I said, that's great. And he said, I just got a whole hell of a lot smarter. And, that stuck with me because no matter how good a coach you are, and there's a ton of great ones out there, you got to have players to do it, and certainly I think Doc's probably been perceived as a slightly better coach since Garnett and those guys came to town. But he was a great coach for both those squads. It was something that kind of stuck with me.
Finishing up here with Michael Crotty, the Williams grad, has an NBA ring on his finger, along with the most games ever played, and started in East history at Williams with 120, and of course a national championship ring to go with it. He's got heavy hands, is what we're trying to say. Michael, I appreciate you joining us here on Hoopsville. And getting your take on the Northeast, but also understanding why your AAU program is probably different than a lot of other AAU programs, and just telling stories as well. As always, we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
No, first I just want to say thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be on. Enjoy listening to the show and following D3 Hoops very, very closely year in and year out as a fan and as somebody that's got a lot of players that are aiming to head in that direction, and certainly as an alum of D3 Hoops. So not much to say on the sign-off except always exciting time of year with the conference titles, championships, and then heading into the NCAAs. And, good luck to all the teams in the Northeast and all over the country. We're looking forward to seeing our national championship on a national stage this year. I think it'll be pretty neat to see it down in Atlanta.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll see you in Salem someday. You ought to make the trip.
Well, I promise to get back there. There's no doubt about it. I'd love to go see it. It's great basketball.
It's only been 9 years. Don't worry.
I appreciate it, Dave.
Very good. Michael Crotty joining us here on the Hoopsville Hotline. Thanks very much, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks. Take care.
I appreciate him joining us here on Hoopsville. We're going to come back, wrap up the show on this special extended version, tell you about Sundays and Mondays plans and why you got to stick and stay with D3Hoops.com and, of course, Hoopsville. You are listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, the National Association of Basketballs, and always the City of Salem. We'll be back right after this.